My name is Raene. I am 22 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Rainey. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Lucky me, I was born into it. My dad was raised kind of as a witness, kind of not. His mom was a witness, and his dad was not. My grandpa kind of would like study around here and there, but never fully went in. He actually passed earlier this year and he never got baptized. He would study, he went out in service a little bit, but would like never fully commit to it. And then my dad, I think when he was around 9, was just kind of like, hey, I don't want to do it anymore. It's not for me. So he went, got married, got divorced, had a kid, and then he met my mom. And my mom was kind of around. She was in the Air Force. She was having kids. She would always say, she didn't have a whole lot of friends or like a really big support system when she was in Texas because it's not where she was. And then she started talking to my Nana, who was always super zealous. She was a pioneer. My mom would always say that people would tease her, like, oh, Roberta's going to get you. She's going to get you in the witnesses. And she'd always be like, no, she's not. I don't like witnesses. That's not for me. She got her. I want to say my mom got baptized when I was like 1 or 2. So my brother got to celebrate his first birthday. I never celebrated anything. I just was, for lack of better words, like fortunate enough that that's just the path that I had. So I was raised in it.
Okay, so that's all you've ever known then. So with that being the case, what was the worldview that it gave you growing up? How'd you see the world around you and the people around you?
It's kind of funny because that was the only thing that I knew. Both of my parents were at least semi-active in it by the time I was 5. I think my dad got baptized at that point. So I kind of remember my dad not being a witness, but by the time I was really old enough to start remembering stuff, he was baptized. But I remember always kind of looking around and being like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because I would come home and I would see that, and then I would go to school and I would be like, these people don't seem, scary or crazy. So I would kind of look around a little bit and be like, I'm supposed to think that this is wrong. But I never fully was like, oh, this is wrong. It would be more of like please, Jehovah, like, let me think that this is wrong so I can walk away from it and not do it. But I never was like, me, myself, I think that this is wrong and I shouldn't do it. I was always like, well, that looks fun and I want the birthday cupcakes or whatever it was.
And it answer, out of the mouth of babes, as they would say, as a kid that young, you saw that something was wrong and it didn't add up to you, or at least it wasn't the way you felt. So you were trying to feel that way. That's an
Yeah.
interesting thing when you think about it.
Yeah, and I remember, so I got baptized really young. I got baptized when I was 9, like a month before I turned 10. And I had wanted to get baptized earlier, but they wouldn't let me. And I still distinctly remember the only reason why I got baptized was because we were studying the Revelation book. And I was like, if I don't get baptized, I'm going to die. And I was scared of dying. I wasn't scared of doing something wrong. I wasn't like, oh, I just really want to serve Jehovah and do this thing because it's the right thing to do. It was like, I just want to save my ass kind of thing.
I want to save my ass. I
Hmm.
think that's that may end up being the title of your episode. Because when you think about it, I say this all the time. I think that really most Jehovah's Witnesses, they're just trying to save their ass. They're scared. It's the fear that God is going to murder them and they don't want to die at his hand. They're just scared. That's it.
Yeah, even now talking to my parents, I'm sure it'll come up, later in the interview, but we went to therapy together last year and they'll kind of say something along those lines of like, oh, well, I don't want to die or I want to be in paradise with you. And I'm just kind of like, okay, but I don't want to make life choices out of fear. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like if I don't fully believe it with everything that I have, I'm good. I'll take my chances.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess you see that other people are able to want it to be a certain way and almost will themselves to believe a thing, even though it doesn't add up. Because psychologically they need it to add up for whatever reason, whether it's saving their own ass, like you said, or whether it's just because they're vulnerable emotionally, they've been through some stuff, they're escaping into this machine that keeps them busy so they don't have to think about their trauma or whatever they've been through. It is interesting to watch people be able to do what you were struggling to do. And I felt the same way. I always found it hard to love Jehovah. I don't know like who that is. I can't see them and I can't talk to them. And I would try so hard to make myself connect to something that I couldn't connect to.
Yeah.
So I understand that feeling. So then you're baptized, obviously very young at 9. I'm not sure. I've heard of many examples too much younger than that. I think I've heard like 8 or 7 maybe. And obviously you tried. So what was it like when you tried and were told no?
So I was molested by a member of the congregation. I was 7 and he was 13. And when it came out, it was presented as almost like we were having like a relationship. Like I remember his mom had pressed really hard to be like, oh no, it was consensual. Like Rainey also was doing it. Rainey was pushing. And I remember being like, I'm 7, so my worldview is still pretty naive. But your son was 6 years older than me. Like, that's definitely not something I asked for. And I didn't even, like, I didn't want it to come out. One of my family members had like walked in on it happening and he was like, like, we're not going to do that. He said something and I was crying, like, please don't say anything. I don't want to get in trouble. So I had asked, I think when I was still 7, maybe 8, I was like, hey, I want to get baptized. I'm scared I'm going to die, kind of thing. And they were like, oh, well, this thing just happened and we need to let more time pass before you can get baptized because we don't want to stumble anybody. And you just had, a slip up. And I remember like my parents and I were both kind of upset about that, but what are you going to say when an elder says no? But that was just so ridiculous to me. And I remember being so upset because my parents had taught me that, I was a victim in that setting, but everybody else was acting like it was a choice that I had made. And the member of the congregation and his mom would go around and tell other people what happened. So people would come up to me and ask me about it when I was little. And I would be like, I didn't know what was going on. And I told him we should do this. And he said, oh, well, we're going to get married one day. So it's okay. And I was 7. So I was like, sure, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, we're going to get married. So this is an okay thing to do. But it broke my little 7-year-old heart to not be able to get baptized. And now looking back, I'm like, that was probably a good thing because that was one of the first things that I was able to really hold on to be like, I don't think that this religion is for me. I don't think it's right.
Uh, yeah, all of that is wrong.
Yeah.
My goodness. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I can't believe that they were allowed to go around talking about this openly and talking about merit. Like that is so messed up. Um, which only compounds the whole situation and makes it worse. I'm so sorry that that happened to you, and uh, who knows what happened to that kid as well. That whole scenario developed in the first place. Very, very, very unhealthy behaviors, and by his parents, they were telling people.
Yeah, I remember still like sitting down at a friend's house and another member of the congregation came up to me and was like, hey, so what happened with you and the other member of the congregation? I heard that you guys kind of were a thing. And I remember I looked at her and I was like, no, we weren't a thing. Like abused me. I didn't ask for that. I was a kid. I was a victim in this situation. And she like looked at me like dead in my face and was like, oh, well, that's not what I heard from his mom. And I remember I would have to walk around as like a 10-year-old defending myself, being like, I didn't ask for that. I was too little to know what was going on at 7, and he was old enough to know at 13. And everybody would say, like, oh, well, like you're the sexual deviant. And I'm like, I'm 10. What do you mean?
Wow, that they just make Jehovah's Witnesses just make everything worse.
Yes.
Like they can take any bad scenario or bad situation and compound it. And I think that this is a good example of how they moralize everything. They don't understand how human beings work, and they see everything as a matter of choice. And you know, interesting that you're defending yourself. Was 13-year-old boy having to defend himself?
Not that I remember.
Uh-huh.
I distinctly remember some members of the congregation and him were talking, and then they would kind of come to me like, hey, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this is a thing that you do. And I was like, no, this was a thing that happened to me. I don't know why he would present it like that. I'm definitely not interested in doing that. So it kind of followed me. I remember still being in like middle school. That was like 5 years, in my rear view mirror kind of thing. And people were still coming up and talking to me about it, kind of like, I had reputation of being a slut when I was like 11. And it was crazy to me to just have to defend myself. And even now, when I talk about it with other members of my family, they'll just kind of, oh, well, that's not what happened, or that's not how it happened, or that's not how people talk to you about it. So even just the gaslighting is insane because I'm like, I was young, but that was a core memory. Like, I distinctly remember how that was handled.
If you can wink, wink, nudge, nudge about something that happened to a 7-year-old, you've got some major issues. There's no wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and it's not cute, and it's not funny, and I goodness, and of course it fell on you, right? I think that it's kind of typical that the woman is or girl is branded as the slut, and the guy just I don't know is seen as, I guess, boys will be boys or whatever, right? And it's just it's so messed up. So did you ever, in the midst of any of that, did anybody ever uh, get you to a therapist or help you or talk to you about it in any healthy way?
Yes and no. So in my recollection, there was never any like law enforcement called. My parents say that there were. I can only argue with them so much because I was 7, they were adults, so that's my perception versus their perception.
But you never spoke to anyone from law enforcement.
No, I didn't. And then I was going to therapy off and on. I started when I was in 4th grade because the school counselor was talking to me. I started saying some things that are kind of, red flags for little kids to say. And the school counselor was like, hey, your kid should probably go see somebody. So I saw someone for a little bit, but I was always very, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. So I would go for a little bit. My parents would take me out of therapy. They'd put me back in. They'd take me out. They put me back in. And then when I was in high school, I was like, hey, mom, I want to go see somebody. Like, I'm not okay. I told her, I'm depressed. I have really bad anxiety. I started having panic attacks at school, which panic attacks in the hallway of high school are pretty embarrassing. So, I wanted to kind of get that under control. And at that point, one of the therapists I had, we were making some really good progress. I really liked him. He was encouraging me to kind of, one day you're going to be an adult. You can put this in your rearview mirror. Let's start talking about college. Let's look into scholarships so you can get, out of the situation that you're in. And then my mom sat down with me and was like, hey, I feel like you going to therapy is taking you farther away from Jehovah. So I would prefer for you to not go anymore. And I looked at her and was like, hey, I want to kill myself. And I really like going to therapy because it makes me feel better. And she was like, well, you can pray about it. And so that was the end of it. I'm now in therapy again. I have my own health insurance, I have my own money. So I'm paying for it myself and kind of working through all of that trauma. But yeah.
So when you told your parents, "Hey, I want to kill myself," they didn't allow you to continue therapy?
No. And then when I was 17 or 18, it was after I had gotten disfellowship. So that was like a year after the therapy. At that point, my dad had went into my room and read my diary. And then my mom read it because she was like, well, I wanted to know, what your dad saw. She was like, I also agree that that was a violation of privacy, but I just kind of wanted to know what we were dealing with. And my dad was like, oh, I didn't know you wanted to kill yourself. I didn't know it was that bad. So they made me go to therapy again. And at that point, I was like, man, that was like 2 years old. Like, I'm already disfellowshipped. I'm working through stuff on my own. Like, I'm laying out a plan for myself on how I'm going to get out of here. I'd rather not go to therapy. But I went again because my dad was like, my kid. And I was like, okay.
So when you want to go to therapy, nah. But
Yeah.
when they decide that now you need to go to therapy, now it's okay.
Yeah, basically.
Um, so let's again. Sorry, all that happened to you. I'm glad that you've been able to find some help, later in life, and I guess off and on a little bit throughout. Um, it's just a shame that adults end up failing their kids, or just in general, all the adults in the congregation are failing you throughout. By not taking what happened to you seriously. Um, so I guess just to rewind a little, what was it like for you growing up? Obviously, I'm sure this what had happened to you at 7 kind of loomed over a lot of things. But then you get baptized at 9 out of the fear from the Revelation book, which is a really intense book for a child to be looking at, those images and pictures of beasts and harlots and red dark skies and weird winged creatures and stuff. Um, Especially because you're being told it's real, and this is how this isn't a fiction book, right? This is gonna happen, and it's imminent, and they're pumping that into you. um what was childhood like at home for you, or childhood, teenagerhood? What was it kind of like? What was the atmosphere of your home? I guess I want to say apart from this other part, but I don't know that you can separate that.
Yeah, it was it was interesting. My parents, tried their best. I don't ever want, if they watch this, I don't want them to think that I have hard feelings for them. I don't. I think that they tried their best with the tools that life had handed them, but it was a little chaotic at home. I have a strong personality. I always have. I probably always will. My parents used to joke that I came out of the womb like, this is what I want and you're gonna give it to me. I'm hungry, and like a, strong cry. And I really have. I've always been like that. And I remember looking around, like I said earlier, and being like, hey, this doesn't make sense. So we would butt heads a lot because I would ask questions and I was never one to kind of go with the flow. So we kind of had some issues because we would be studying and I would say, well, I don't agree with that. Or, well, that doesn't make sense to me. Or, well, I don't think that's right. Or I would be like, well, I learned this in school and it doesn't add up with what you're saying here. And then my dad was married before and he had a child in the previous marriage. So my sister is 8 years older than me. So she would kind of come in and be like, it's not always like all the way right. And I would be like, so I have an adult like confirming that. So that would kind of make us butt heads more. And I would, I want to go to prom or I want to go to the homecoming dance. Well, you can't. Well, but I want to. And I don't think it's fair that you're telling me that. And I would threaten to call CPS. I would be like, you spanked me too hard, or you slapped me because I was giving you attitude. And I don't think that's fair. I'm going to call someone. So it was Looking back now, I'm really proud of myself. I wish that the younger version of me didn't have to carry all of what she did, but I am, incredibly proud and incredibly thankful to and of her for handling it the way that she did. It's actually kind of made me believe in reincarnation a little bit because sometimes I look back at the way I handled things and the way that I was so sure of myself. And I'm like, there's no way that reincarnation isn't real. There's no way that I just started as like a fresh life with that much, you know, courage and with that much, this is what I think and this is what is right and this is what it's wrong for no reason.
Yeah. So I guess you see that as having some inherent wisdom from
Mhm.
a previous life. Whatever the case, good for you for good for the young you for being able to stand up, for whatever you attribute that to. I'm just glad that she was able to stand up for you, because it sounded like you needed somebody to.
Yeah. And it would really be sometimes I remember I would sit there and just like it was almost like I was like watching myself say these things to my parents or to elders in the congregation. I just kind of be sitting back like, oh my gosh, look at her. Like she's spitting truth. I didn't even think about that myself.
So let me ask you. So was that so? Let's talk about school. Going through school through all these years, did you find that to be an escape at all for you, or did you find at any point that those qualities that you had of being maybe a little bit more outspoken or whatever did you find maybe that respected a little bit more at school where it was not at home? Were you appreciated for that outside of the whole witness realm?
Yeah, so elementary school was a little tough for me because I was still figuring things out and I was still trying to, I'm a witness and they push, go and witness at school and blah blah blah. So it was kind of hard because people are like, this girl kind of weird, like what's wrong with her? Or I wanted to fit in so badly, but I didn't really know how to because my social skills weren't the best. Because when I was at home, I mostly hung out with other adults because I was too worldly to fit in with the witness kids, but I was too witnessy to fit in with the worldly kids. And then I was homeschooled for like 2.5 years in middle school. So I went back like towards the end of the second semester of eighth grade into public school. And at that point, school became a bit more of an escape. I still have women that I met in high school that I talk to, and I am so incredibly grateful to them for their love and grace that they extended to me. No matter how weird I was, they just kept rocking with it. And they were like, she a little traumatized, but we love her and she's cool. And they kept me around. And I would go home and be, I hate this. And I would go to school and it would be a way for me to practice being myself and to start trying to figure out who and how I wanted to be as an adult. I even around the time I got disfellowshipped, my parents took away my car and they took away my right to ride the school bus. And I was like, how do you want me to get to school? And they said, that is not our problem. Figure it out. So one of the girls I went to high school with would wake up early every morning and she would pick me up from my house. We would go to her house. She would finish getting ready for school. We would go get breakfast and then we would drive to school together. And I am so grateful for her and for that experience because it also helps me to see, for lack of a better word, worldly people aren't all bad. And I was starting to see that, unconditional love was a thing that I had never experienced before and that I could get it out in the world and I didn't have to be a witness to have people who loved me.
Man, shout out to whoever that person is that took you to school. That's really cool.
Yeah, she's
Uh,
awesome.
that's awesome. Because I remember on one of the episodes, somebody said there were kids at school that would bring clothes for them that looked a little more in line with what people would wear at school because they were so sheltered. And I always just thought that was such a beautiful thing. Um, I mean, I don't understand. I guess unless your parents maybe thought that it was worldly influences from school or something that were corrupting you in some way. Like, why would you take somebody's education? Uh,
Yeah.
Other than that's often part of gaslighting in some ways itself. But I'm just sorry that happened as well. But I'm glad that you found a way. And honestly, look at how it backfired. It puts you into a position where you had to work with worldly people, and they got to show how they truly cared. And that's a beautiful thing that you got to see that from such an early age.
Yeah, it really it helped a lot because I did. I got lucky when I was on my way out. I had so many people who were not a part of the organization who didn't really know me that well and were just like, "Hey, I see that you're struggling. I see the light in you. Let me help you." I even when my parents kicked me out, I moved in with my ex-boyfriend's aunt and I still talk to her. She's still somebody that's incredibly important to me and she charged me an incredibly low amount for rent because she knew I had no idea what I was doing and she kind of helped me just get acclimated to the world. And her mom was kind of in a similar situation to me. She was raised as a witness and got disfellowshipped when she was young. So she just was like, "Hey, I get it. So come on, like, I'll help you. I got you." And that was another reason for me to be like, well, why would I go back? Because this person who just met me like 6 months ago is showing me more love and support than I've ever gotten from my parents. So I don't have a reason to go back.
Yeah. So you kind of got a hand up from some people, which is really awesome. I found the same too, on the outside, that people were willing to help and to reach out in new ways, and um, feels good, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it feels amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So what about, so you were baptized at 9, so very young. What was your life like at the Kingdom Hall through this period of time? Were you, I don't know, since you got baptized so young, like, were you made an example of because you did that?
Yes, I was, and it was really confusing. So I remember, double life, the saying that we heard all the time. I really did end up living truly two separate and complete lives because I would go and have my friends would most of my friends didn't get baptized until they were like 13 or later. So I would have their parents being like, "Oh, well, Rainey's been baptized for 4 years and you still haven't gotten baptized." And that would be really awkward. And then when I was homeschooling, my mom was a regular auxiliary pioneer. So I was out in service with her a lot because that's just what we were doing. So I got really close with all of the other pioneers in the congregation. I still, have a soft spot in my heart for them. I still love them, and we had a lot of great experiences. But it kind of turned me into a little bit of like a 40-year-old in an 11-year-old body. So I would go to school and be like, "Let's talk about crock pot recipes." And they'd be like, "Girl, what?" Um, but I was a bit of like "Oh, well, she got baptized so young." And, my Nana, everybody loved my Nana because she was a regular pioneer for so long. And it would be like, "Oh, well, you're her granddaughter and she's just so great. And we can't wait to see what you do with your life growing up and how you serve Jehovah." And on the inside, I'd be like, "I am halfway out the door, but thank you for that." So, it was interesting. I actually managed to skate by without getting reproved or really getting in trouble at all until I was like 15 or 16 when somebody told on me. um, but yeah, I was a bit of an example and it was awkward because then I feel like sometimes the other kids in the congregation would kind of resent me a little bit. And I would be like, "I was 9 and I was scared. And I really wish I hadn't gotten baptized. And I'm sorry that they're using me against you."
Excellent point. The person that is in that position ends up being you. The other people are compared to them, and that's not fair and not healthy. Um, Also, I appreciated your point about being the little 40-year-old crockpot recipe person, because really Jehovah's Witnesses do. Uh, they make everything so super serious. 9-year-olds shouldn't be worried about the end of the world, but they are because they're raised around basically a doomsday cult. And so you're worried about things that shouldn't be yours to take on. And so a lot of children struggle, even as adults sometimes, to just have fun. Everything always has to be so deathly serious because we grew up in that environment. And I'm glad that you were able to see, though, how unfair it was. That you were put in that position and how it was used against other people as well. Did that affect your ability to make friends in the congregation?
A little bit, because I would get it was more so my parents would kind of be like, "Well, you can't be friends with them because they're a bad influence or because they're a bad association." And I would be like, "You don't know what I do behind closed doors, please. Like, I love this person. They're my escape." Like, there was a girl, we continued on being friends into adulthood, and it was just so hard because she never got baptized because her dad wasn't a witness, only her mom was. And my parents were constantly like, "You shouldn't be friends with her, you shouldn't be friends with her, you shouldn't be friends with her." And I was like, "She's literally like keeping my brain off, like screwed on right, please don't take this away from me." And then it would kind of, the kids that my brother was able to kind of integrate better in with, like the bad association kids, because he was a little, we got out at the same time, but he was like 11 and he just would got in trouble more often than I did, I guess. And his social skills were a little better refined than mine were at that age. So I would try to go and like hang out with my brother's friends, but they wouldn't want to say everything in front of me because they were like, "Oh, well, Rainey has this goody two shoes like persona around her." And I'm like, "I don't want it. Like, take it away from me. I don't want it, please. Like, I just want to be friends with you guys."
Yeah.
But it was also nice because I did make friends with the middle-aged people, and I don't wanna take that away from them because we did have some great times, and I still have some fantastic recipes from them. It would have been fantastic to, have friends my own age, but I'll take what I can get.
Sure. Yeah. It's not to denigrate the friendships that you did have, but you should have also, in a healthy environment, been allowed to be yourself,
Yeah, totally.
and have the friends that you wanted to have. Um, so with that said, so can you take us into your teenage years as you go down this path? I mean, you alluded to what, 15, 16, I guess things started coming out that you were involved in that double life. So how did things progress for you?
Yeah, so I was able to kind of get some friends that, um had, like, a good reputation also like I did, but also behind closed doors were not so great. And I had a smartphone at that point, so I was able to kind of be on social media, and my parents, for as well as they understood technology, didn't understand it as well as they thought that they did, so I was able to kinda get away with some things. Um, it started with like internet boyfriends here and there, and then I was in school, so I was able to have like my first kiss and start having boyfriends there and getting close to, becoming unevenly yoked with the world and having more friends in school. And then one of the girls told on me for like sexting. I say that with quotes because it was like a very watered down version of sexting. It wasn't anything like too crazy. But she told on me for that. And so I got reproved. But I was able to kind of be a little more like explore my sexuality like everybody does when they're a teenager. That's part of being a teenager. I, of course, got in trouble for masturbating a couple times because the horror, even though most people masturbate is what it is. But yeah, that's kind of what it was. And then I'm still a little salty because when I got disfellowship, that time I got reproved came back to bite me in the ass because it was again for like quote unquote sexting. It wasn't even a full nude. It was like shoulders up. You couldn't see anything. But they were like, "Oh, well, you got in trouble for sexting like a year and a half ago. So it seems that you're not repentant." And then they asked, like, "How are you going to feel if we disfellowship you?" And I, with my little badass self that I've always been, very blunt, I looked the elders dead in their shit and I was like, "Well, I'm going to miss my friends. But, the rest of it, I don't really know. I don't think I care." And so kind of was a nail in the coffin. But that, I still looking back, I'm like, who was that 17-year-old with that much confidence and sass to be in this room with my parents where I just got like grilled to the third degree and I had to answer all of it with my parents and these like old white men to still look at them and be like, I don't care, whatever, get out of here, I want to leave. And I'm like, okay.
Wow. So your judicial committee, then your parents were there, and this was for a sext from the shoulders up.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Obviously sexting can be more than just images, I guess, but it's just all right. I Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. And I still think it's pretty funny. I think my dad kind of regrets the way he handled it a little bit because they found out because they stopped looking at my phone for like almost 2 years. And then one day I came home and they were like, give us your phone. And I was like, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I have a boyfriend. We've been together for like 6 months. Here's my phone. Have fun. And then my dad, found the pictures, found out I had a boyfriend, was reading the conversations between me and my friends. Like he did like a deep dive into my phone. And then he said, you need to talk to the elders. And I told him, Dad, right now I'm really angry. I'm really confused. I'm really hurt. I'm telling you, if I have a meeting with the elders, I'm going to get disfellowshipped and I'm not going to get reinstated because I don't want to. I don't care. And he was like, well, that's fine. I'm going to let you do it on your time. And I was like, that's fine. I will talk to them. I promise. But right now I'm really angry and it's not a good time. So he told them anyway. And then an elder came up to me at the meeting and was like, hey, we want to have a meeting with you. Will this day work? And I was like, I felt like I couldn't say no. So I said yes. And in the meeting I was really angry. I knew how I was feeling. I got disfellowshipped. And then I told my dad, with peace and love, not trying to like come at you, but that was kind of your fault. If you had just let me do it in my time, my head would have probably been screwed on better and I would have been able to kind of navigate it in a different way. And he has said now, yeah, I probably should have just let you do it and I should have just listened to you. And I'm like, but here we are. And it did end up being a blessing in my life because I honestly don't know if I hadn't gotten disfellowshipped if I would have ever left. So in hindsight, I'm grateful that it happened that way. But
I can't help but be struck by the juxtaposition of 7-year-old Raene and what happened. And it doesn't sound like anything was really done about that. And everybody just kind of about the whole situation, which is horrifying. To then, was it 17-year-old Raene sexted and you gotta go? Like, what?
yeah, I actually brought that up in my judicial committee. I said that. I was like, this is an experience that I had when I was 7. And I was like, it left an ugly taste in my mouth because nobody protected me. Nobody cared. And I'm like, and now everybody wants to be all upset with me and get at me. Like I don't have, trauma and whatever that I'm trying to work through still from that. And now you want to get mad at how I'm handling things now. But what about how it was handled back then? And the elder was just like, well, we weren't here for that. And man is imperfect. And we're an organization run by men. And basically you just need to get over it. And I was like,
well, then maybe you need to get over my sexting since it's got not a damn thing to do with you. And I'm just an imperfect person, right?
Literally. But what are you going to do?
It's just the way that they excuse everything with well, we're just imperfect. Like if you talk to a Jehovah's Witness today about something like the Australian Royal Commission or the issue that they have inside with child sex abuse, and then they say, well, the Catholic Church, blah, blah, blah. And, we're all just imperfect. Well, you didn't give the Catholic Church that benefit of the doubt of just being imperfect when you were railing against them because you didn't know or didn't think you had a problem.
Yeah, that's been one of my favorite things to kind of watch because I remember when I was little how hard they would go at the Catholics. And I would kind of be sitting there in the back of my head like, I remember what happened to me. I remember how I watched it be handled. And now it's, oh, well, we're imperfect and things happen. And it's like, well, I don't think you would be getting sued this hard if you really didn't do anything wrong. But believe what you want, I guess. Whatever helps you sleep at night.
I also thought that Jehovah's Holy Spirit was supposed to be leading them. So is Jehovah's Holy Spirit imperfect? How does it continue to allow these things to happen? And oopsie,
Mhm.
like that doesn't add up either.
And
So
that's when you get. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
I understand. So then you are disfellowshipped at 17.
Mhm.
And how does, I mean, so I guess you said that your parents took your car away, uh, can't ride the school bus. So you were still living at home. So they didn't immediately kick you out, right? Though you alluded to that at some point. So how did that go at 17? What was the environment like just living at home under those circumstances?
So it got a little awkward. So I remember one of the main things that we would argue about is my friend that I had mentioned earlier, whose dad was not a witness. She had two phones. So she had a phone at her mom's house and a phone at her dad's house. So for a little bit, my parents were letting me talk to her when she was at her dad's and when she had that phone. And then they were like, oh, well, you can't do that anymore. And then it would be like, obviously I couldn't talk to any witnesses, and I would say, it's not fair for you to just not give me a social life. Like that isn't fair, that's inhumane. And they were like, we agree with you. So they would kind of let me hang out with some people, and then they would be like, oh, I just don't think it's appropriate, or I just don't want you to have worldly friends. And I had a really strict curfew. And then I turned 18 and I went and got my belly button pierced. And then a couple months later, I got my first tattoo. And they would just kind of be like, I don't like that. And I would be like, that really sucks for you. But, I'm 18 and I don't need your permission to do it anymore. So I'm not going to ask for it. I'm just going to do it. Um, and then a little bit before, so it was always, once you turn 19, you got to go. And I told them that's not fair. I work two part-time jobs at $9 an hour. I don't know where you think I'm going to go. And then a little bit before my birthday, I had spent the night at my friend's house. My dad told me that I could. And then I came home and he was like, this is too much for me. I feel like it's affecting my spiritual relationship with Jehovah. And I just don't want you in the house anymore. We would like you to be moved out by Saturday. And I was like, where am I gonna go and what am I gonna do? And he was like, that's not my problem. He was like, the elders have been telling me that I shouldn't let you live here with me. So they moved it up, and my ex's aunt was nice enough to let me move up the day that I was going to move into her house. So it was okay for a little bit. For a little bit, it was working out. I obviously still had to go to the meetings. I would go to the meetings. I would be respectful. I wasn't making faces. I didn't sleep. I would just sit there and pretend like I was listening. So everybody looking at me would think that I was, paying attention and still trying to come back. And then I would go home and hang out with my friends from school and kind of do my own thing. There was one time, my first convention after I got disfellowshipped was probably one of like the worst things I've ever been through. I remember I told my dad after the Friday, I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this. I was like, my anxiety is already really bad anyway. Like it was bad before I got disfellowshipped. And I just told him like, this is horrible. I don't think I can do it. People keep coming up to me. I don't want to tell them I'm disfellowshipped because it's uncomfortable for them. It's uncomfortable for me. I told him like, I don't know how much more I can handle it. And then the Saturday, I was sitting there, and a member of the congregation who was in a different congregation than me came up to me. He didn't know. He said hi to me. I looked at him and I just like froze. And then I can't remember which parent. One of my parents came up behind me and was like, oh, she's disfellowshipped. And just the look that he gave me, he just looked so hurt and sad and confused. And I lost it. Like I just started sobbing. I couldn't stop. Like I cried off all of my makeup. I was a big old mess. My parents had to like form like a huddle around me to get me out of the door because I was making a scene. And then they were like, I'm so sorry. We shouldn't have made you come. Like, we should have listened to you. You knew what your limits were. So I got to sit out the rest of that day. And then I decided to go back the next Sunday. But it was it was pretty rough because it I didn't want to disappoint people. I didn't want people to be upset with me. Everybody thought that I had such a bright future with the witnesses, and knowing that I had disappointed those people was hard for me. And then losing the only support system I had ever known was also really hard. And I was young and trying to figure out the world and kind of get started with stuff. And that's just a lot to go through when you're becoming an adult.
Yeah. There's a theme I'm seeing here, which is we should have listened to you. Seems like that's kind of a common theme that comes up throughout your story is people not listening to you and pushing you to do what they wanted you to do. And then you ended up facing the repercussions of that. You ended up being harmed by it, and and then suddenly they see it. Um, you mentioned that it was really hard to disappoint all those people around you, and when we're in, it really feels like that, doesn't it? It feels like we've let them down, right?
Mhm.
But the reality is, it's their own intolerant, narrow-minded beliefs that cause them to be let down. It's the black person. It's not the black person's fault that the racist is offended by their presence. It's the racist's fault for having narrow-minded, intolerant, racist beliefs.
Mhm.
Or it's not the gay person's responsibility that homophobes are offended by their presence. No, it's the homophobes' responsibility because they have narrow-minded, intolerant beliefs. And it's not our responsibility for the pain of those family members or those Jehovah's Witnesses that were once in our lives. No, they hold narrow-minded, intolerant beliefs. They can't accept anybody that's not just like them. And the only time that they do accept them is if they hope that they're going to become just like them. There's still hope to get them into the fold. So then they're interested. But it's their beliefs that hurt them. They're the one that lives in this tiny little alternate reality where they can't accept anyone outside of what they are. And it's freeing to realize that, because they're great at victim blaming. We shun you, it's your fault. No, you shun me because that's what you do. That's an act that you perform. That's not my fault.
Yeah, that was one that was really hard for me to unpack. I remember I was disfellowshipped and I was walking around defending them. Like my ex at the time would be like, "Oh, the witnesses are crazy, and I can't believe your parents are doing that to you." And I'd be like, "Well, hang on, like, it's not my belief, it's not for me, but they're entitled to that, and they love me, and that's how they're showing it, and they just want me to come back, and they just want me to live." And it really wasn't until maybe like a year or two ago that I even allowed myself to do some more research and to allow myself to kind of join the ex-JW community. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like that probably really is a cult, or that is a crazy thing that happened to me, or that wasn't my fault, and that is on you. And now I'm able to look at my family and be like, that's on you. I made a life choice and you are also making a life choice. And in my life choice, you're able to be a witness. I don't care. If that's what you want to do, that is fine. I'm not going to push you to not do that. You're the one that's trying to get me to join in what you're doing. And that is not love. That is conditions. And that's not what love is. And it is like the victim blaming is so strong that it took me being like fully removed from it for almost 4 years to even be able to look back and be like, oh, that was wrong and that was messed up and that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult. That's why there are so many POMI people out there, physically out, mentally in, because they shame you to a point where you feel like, well, it must be my fault. I'm a terrible person, clearly, so everything must be my fault. It can't possibly be the fault of these people. And we tend to put them up here and ourselves down here. And that's because they've created that through the gaslighting and all of the things that have gone on for all those years inside the cult. They make you think that you're crazy, you're not good enough, they're all great. and you're constantly trying to reach that level and relying on them to tell you you're okay. And the reality is you've always been okay. I mean, I'm not saying you weren't hurting at times, but you've always been enough. You've always been worthy of love and attention and praise and all those things. But you know, they just set it up to where you have to earn it from them all the time. So when we leave, we're still a lot of times doing that same thing, trying to earn that from them or putting them up on that pedestal. Still until we get healthy, which I'm glad that you've been able to do over time. It does take time.
And that's one of the things that I try to remember even when I'm dealing with my family, and as frustrated as I am with, the birth of my nephew and not being able to meet him, and even my brother's wedding, I was able to go, but I couldn't go to the reception. And I've just tried to remind myself, they don't fully know what they're doing. They were gaslit. It's not personal. It's just what they think, especially for, my brother, because we were both raised in it. And I have to kind of take a step back and try to extend grace to him, even though I don't get it, and just be like, hey, at least I'm not in that mindset anymore. And I wish you well. And if you decide to wake up one day, I will be here if you want it. And I can, I have resources to make it easier for you than it was for me on my way out.
Yeah, good for you that you can see that there's two sides to it. On the one hand, you need to be able to hold your own feelings. You have every right to be pissed off, and probably beneath that anger is just a lot of hurt, pain, sadness. The anger is just the expression of it. But on the other hand, when we can balance that with acceptance, letting go of the hope that things could have been different, and realizing that these other people are cult victims and they're just doing what they're probably, no one wakes up and is like, I'm going to get into a cult today and destroy my family. Nobody does that, but they, through a long process, end up in that situation due to certain environmental factors, mental and emotional tools or lack thereof, their history, their biology, their psychology, all this stuff. They end up in that position, and then they're just acting what they know. They're doing their best. They're just not very good at life right now. They're not very healthy. They're not bad people. They're just not super healthy. And as you get more and more healthy, you'll be able to you grow far beyond them, and then it would be up to them to play catch up. But that acceptance piece isn't there to say your feelings don't matter, but it just helps balance them out a little bit, right? You have the right to be angry and upset, and you probably should feel those feelings to some degree and not eschew them. But also, if we can balance that with some compassion for the fact that they're cult victims too, just like we once were, it does help to balance that out and to give some understanding so you're not so hurt by everything they do. I'm glad that you've been able to see that. That's very mature. That's something that a lot of people have a hard time with.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken a lot of therapy and a lot of me, being angry and saying angry things and acting out and whatever, and then taking a step back and being like, okay, that felt really good in the moment. But then I look under it and I'm like, oh, well, they're in the headspace that I was in. And if somebody had said that to me, I wouldn't have taken it very well, or whatever it is. And there are still times where I am angry, and I said some things when we were in therapy that I don't necessarily regret, but that were a little stronger than what I would have said if I hadn't been, in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the anger. But it's all part of the healing process, and it is a process.
Yeah, it is. It is a process. So you were disfellowshipped at 17, and then you were kicked out at 18?
Yeah, just before I turned 18.
Just before you turned 18. And so what was the trajectory of your life there? 18-year-olds often are thinking about college or whatever they're going to do after high school, or joining the working world. You obviously, I guess, had to join. You were already working. I think you said 2 jobs. So, I guess what was your path from there to waking up and to getting some stability in your feet under yourself?
Yeah, so I was working a part-time retail job and I was working with an older lady who took me under her wing because I just really got lucky with the people that I met. And she was like, "Hey, my daughter works in property management. You should apply with her." And I was like, "I'm okay." And she was like, "That was not a suggestion. You're going to apply with her because you can get a discount on your rent and it's a really good job for you to have when you're 19." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." um, so I applied for the job. I took it. I've been doing that for just under 4 years now. And it's still, the experience that I had with the lady that I worked the retail job with, and the experience that I had with her daughter taking me under her wing, and her daughter being like, "I know you don't know how 401ks work. Let me teach you." Or, "I know you don't know how any of this works. Let me show it to you." That was another way for me to see, like, oh, the world is not scary and it is not bad and it's probably not going to end. We don't really know, but we know. Um and it just kind of helped me to be like, "Hey, like, I have a good job and I'm making good money." And even now, the life that I have, my boyfriend is amazing. We just bought a house and closed on it like 2 months ago, and I'm just,
Congratulations.
you. And yeah, I mean, I've just adjusted really well, and I have people in my life who love me unconditionally. I still have my sister. One of my coworkers now is as close to me as a sister, and her friendship means the world to me. And through any like doubts or anything that I have, like, she is there with all of my other friends to be like, "Hey, we got this, you got this. We're going to keep pushing through. You can borrow my family whenever you need to." And I still have, my mom's parents that are there and supporting me and showing me so much love and behind me with every step, like, "You got it. It's okay. Don't give up. You got it. You got it. You still have a support system. You still have a family. Don't give up. Keep going." And I've been able to, and it's given me even just the space to stop surviving and stop trying to just, keep get my feet on the ground, and to keep, oxygen in my lungs, and to be able to stop, look around, question things, and get to a point where I'm able to live and thrive and not just survive.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. Very, very happy. Um, what helped you? So I think you alluded to looking at the joining the ex-Jehovah's Witness community on some level. What was it that kind of helped you to, I guess, wake up? Were there any resources that helped you to see? Because you mentioned you did realize at some point, oh, this was, a cult. What helped you to see that?
The bite model.
Hmm.
I Someone had posted that, and then they posted, like, all of the ways that the witnesses fit in with that, and
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, shit," like, having it all laid out in front of me in black and white was like, "Oh my gosh, that okay." And then I did some more research into, the child sex abuse cases. There was, I can't think of what the show is called, but there was one of the shows that came out where they had, like, interviewed other, witnesses who had sex abuse when they were children, and just the similarities in how those were handled and how it was handled with me. I was able to be like, "Oh, that wasn't just a one-time occurrence. That's just how they handle it. Like, that's really messed up." And then it was honestly just talking to other people that had left. There was a brother who had gotten disfellowshipped. I was really close to him and his sister, and they ended up living at the property that I worked at. And I just would talk to him, and I saw that he was okay. He had a kid, he had a girlfriend, he has like a whole life going for him. And just hearing everybody's stories, I was able to be like, "Oh, I'm not crazy. This isn't something that just happened to me. I'm not the only one that had this experience." Because my family made me feel like I was just a freak. Like, "Oh, well, I don't know why you have such an issue with it. We're all fine." And I was like, "Oh my God, like, what is wrong with me? Did I not pray hard enough? What was it? And to just see that there was other people that were like, oh no, that's just crazy, or that wasn't for me too, where I also had the same experience. I was able to be like, oh, I really am not crazy, and it is just the way that they work. And still at the end of the day, if being a witness is like what's best for you and what, you know, gets you up at night, who am I to argue with that? But there's a whole other big community of love and support that is out there should you decide to take it, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't ascribe to the belief that you can really super be healthy and be in a cult. But there's also help out there, right? You know, and if you're willing to be vulnerable and reach out, there's ways to get help, and you don't have to be blamed as a victim for things, and you're not alone, and you're not crazy. You know, we all went through. You know, one of the reasons that really that I even do this podcast, and when I told my story as the first podcast, this JW Life, was because I felt so alone for so long as well. Like, am I the only person that sees this? Am I the only person that feels this way? And because nobody is allowed to speak out inside the organization, and you can't have these real open, honest conversations, you feel alone. And so I just wish more and more people would be vulnerable and tell their stories, because I mean, just you telling yours today, there's going to be somebody out there that hears this. It's going to feel just like you did when you heard other people's stories, right? And it's helpful when we're open about what we've been through, and other people can know that they weren't alone.
Yeah, I think that really is just the biggest thing, is talking to other people, and even other people in different religions, like talking to, you know, ex-Mormons or whatever it is. And I just consumed so much media about cults. Like every book, show, movie I could get my hands on, just to sometimes I just needed like the reminder to be like, I'm not crazy, or this wasn't just me. Because it, even now, sometimes I'll kind of be like, oh my God, like Armageddon's coming. And then I have to be like, ooh, take a deep breath. Like, go reach out, go, you know, consume some media. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm not the only one that also thinks that. And it's okay. And it's actually, it was, I think the thing that did it for me the most too was to see like, I feel like the witnesses would always push like, oh, well, there's so many of us. There's so many of us. So how could we be wrong? And it's a worldwide thing. And then like leaving and seeing how many people weren't witnesses was like, oh, huh, that was kind of some bullshit that you were feeding me there. Like, you guys have like 8 million people. That's really not that much. Like, the whole rest of the world is so big and so vast. And there really is a corner in a community for everybody with every belief and every interest. And that was also really helpful to see.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it is funny to hear stories from other people in other religions, and to see that, you know, their religion also said that they were the biggest, they were the fastest growing, they were they you know, they had their message published the most in some particular narrow way or whatever. It's just a common thing that people do in these groups. And, you know, like Islam, Muslims are this huge majority, right? You know, there's just so many Muslims out there, you know, far more Muslims than there are Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And they believe in a different God, and they have a different book. And then we could go to, you know, all these other religions as well. And so it's just, it is interesting to look back and see. It's kind of the height of arrogance to think that 8 million people today are, you know, we were right. We had it all right. Everybody else is dead wrong. We are so right. We know the whole past, and we are right about all of that. We know the whole present, and we are right about all of that. And we know the whole future, and we're right about all that too. And the whole universe, we know it all. Like, it's just, it's so arrogant. It's the height of grandiosity.
Yeah, it's crazy to look, especially when once I realized how many times they predicted things and then got them wrong. Because I was young, you know, I wasn't there for any of the estimates in the 70s, and to look back and read all of that, and it is crazy. It's like, okay, well, if you were wrong that many times before, how do I know you're not also wrong about this? So, no, thank you.
Because new light.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
weren't wrong. It's just new light.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because when I was in it, I didn't think anything of that. Like, I like to think of myself as like an intelligent person who likes to, read and do research and stuff. And I didn't think it was weird at all when they would be like, oh, well, throw that book away and don't read it anymore. And we don't talk about it anymore. And we're going to do this. I was like, woo, this is exciting. Like, we have a new Bible. Woohoo. And now looking back, I'm like, what were you hiding? What were you trying to like kind of sweep under the rug? And it's crazy once you fully take a step back and look at it with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective, just to be like, y'all are interesting and a little
Yeah.
crazy.
Along that line, is there anything that you've learned since leaving that has really helped you? Whether it's something, in a doctrinal way that like you mentioned Armageddon. Armageddon's mentioned one time in the Bible, one verse, Revelation. They have to cherry pick like Great Tribulation from Matthew, and then it's one verse in Revelation. They're trying to create this whole narrative out of all these cherry picked random scattered verses. So like maybe it's a doctrinal thing that helped you to let go of something, or maybe it's just something mentally and emotionally that impacted you. Has there been some sort of wisdom or something that you've gained along the way that has really made an impact on you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always really liked yoga. And my mom would do it with me for a little bit, and then she would, oh, well, you shouldn't do that anymore because I can't even remember the logic that they put behind it, but it would pull me away from being connected to my breath and to my body and to my spirit. And since leaving, have gotten a lot more into yoga. I've been able to get into running. I was always way too depressed to do that before, and I've just really learned how easy it is to control somebody when you take them away from being connected to their body and to their spirit. And I've learned how important it is to just take a step back and take time to sit in discomfort or to sit in confusion and to just breathe through it and connect to, your body and who you are at the end of the day. And even just, it's not anything wrong to be a little selfish. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first. There's nothing wrong with, caring for your body or for wanting to have nice things. You're not selfish. You're not a horrible person. Do what makes you happy and find what feels good. Really, there's one of the YouTubers I listen to for yoga. That's what she always says, is find what feels good. And I always felt so bad before because the things that felt good didn't line up with what I was supposed to be doing. And I've since learned that there's a reason it didn't line up with what I was supposed to be doing, because when you're following, your spirit and what feels good, it's going to take you away from a cult, which is fine and probably what you need.
Yeah. They don't want you to feel good. They need you sick so
Yeah.
that you need their cure. That they don't want you to feel good. And self-care is not selfish.
Mm-mm.
It's healthy. And they make everything that is self-care feel like it's selfish, because heaven forbid for a minute it's not about them. And again, then you might actually feel good and not need them because you feel good. So is there anything you'd like to say to anybody that shuns you? Like if you have a message for just in general or even in particular, is there something you wish you could say to those that no longer talk to you?
To my family in particular, I just always think when I was really little, my aunt got disfellowshipped, and she, with peace and love to my other aunts, I love all of them, but she was my favorite. She was special. She just had such, a big heart, and it broke my heart when I wasn't able to talk to her anymore. I didn't get it. I was really young. And then she got cancer when I was in middle school, so we were able to talk to her because she was sick and she needed help, and she eventually passed. And that is a hurt that I think that I will always carry with me, that I wasn't able to be there for her until she was dying. And I miss out on all of that time with her. And I just want to, say, is it really worth it? Even if you have, it's just a tiny sliver of doubt of maybe I'm not doing the right thing. What if, I were to die tomorrow, or if you were to die tomorrow, or if one of us were to be fatally ill? Is it worth it? Is that truly the life that you want to live? Because what you know for sure that you have is a life that you're living right now. What you don't know for sure about is living in a paradise or Armageddon even coming. And is it really worth wasting that time where you could just be, loving the people that you love and spending the time with them that you know that you have?
Yeah, 100%. I'm sorry that you lost out on that time with your aunt. I remember when my dad was in hospice, and I was invited to see him one last time. Uh, that opportunity, I guess, came up, and I remember I was talking to just a worldly person, so they didn't have the perspective of a witness. And I said, it's weird, I'm invited to go back and see my dad. I've been shunned for the last 6 months, and now, this is happening. And she said, well, wait a minute. If shunning is the right thing to do, shouldn't you do it all the way through? Why on your deathbed is now it okay? It's now okay to not shun. Like that shows it's such a fallacy. Why is it now okay to not shun? You should shun to the end if that's what you really believe is right. If you thought that was a sin to not shun, then you just messed up right at the end. But you see how it doesn't make sense, and it's just not healthy, and it's costing people relationships with the people they love. I was just thinking the other day about how I just want to go out there, like walk into a Kingdom Hall and just be like, I just want to shake them, and just be like, what is wrong with you? You are missing it. And I know what's wrong. I understand why they are like they are, but it's like we are missing out on actual life with people that we care about for a stupid fairy tale. What are we doing? We have something real today and we're sacrificing it for something that has still not happened. Where's the end? The end has not come yet. It's been the generations that were not going to pass away have passed away. What are we doing? And so it's just so sad. I'm sorry that so many people are missing out on life with people that they could care about and love and have good times with.
Yeah, I feel you. I do every day. I'm in therapy, and I'm like, I just want to show up to my parents' house and be like, ah! But what is that going to do?
Doesn't work.
Yeah,
Doesn't work. And in the end, nobody wins. And so they just really have created this no-win situation. All we can do is take care of ourselves, go live the best life we can, and use our one life that we know we have the best we can. And hey, if reincarnation is the thing, then that will benefit us in the next, right? Or if heaven is a thing, or if there is a pair, or whatever, if there's an afterlife of some sort or another life, how's it gonna be a detriment to live a good life today?
Yeah, literally. But it's something that I feel like everybody just needs to find on their own,
Yeah.
and I really hope that everybody figures it out one day. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hope. Just want to see everybody be able to actually be happy, whatever that is for them. So let's talk about that then. So what's happiness for you? What do you enjoy today? Is there anything other than this new house that you're, planning for the future?
Um, my boyfriend and I talk about maybe getting married one day, so that's something
Cool.
that I am looking forward to and excited about. And I mean, it honestly, having hobbies has been super fun for me because before it was, all of your free time has to be going out in service and preaching. And now I'm actually sitting in my craft room because I've learned I'm really crafty and I like making stuff and, doing stuff with my hands. And I look forward to one day having kids that I raise in a space where they're able to figure out who they are, and I just support them in whoever they want to be and not tell them who they should be and just let them figure it out for themselves and create a space for them to do that. And um Yeah, I mean, it's just been practicing unconditional love for myself and for others, and just getting to spend my free time how I wanna spend my free time and not feeling bad for, going out and drinking or partying or whatever, because 'cause I'm in my early 20s, and that's one of the joys of being in your early 20s.
So you just get to be you now, and
Yeah.
figure out who you are in certain ways. So like finding hobbies and things like that. And I think your description there of raising children is something that I think it would probably hit all of us in the heart a little bit who listen, because we all wish we would have had that growing up on some level. So I hope you get to have that experience and give that experience to someone else someday. That's a beautiful thing. So appreciate you telling your story, and um, I hope that you get all the wonderful things that you have coming to you.
Thank you, and thank you for honestly having this, space set up, because this is one of the things that I found when I was first, waking up and allowing myself to do some research, and all of the stories here is another reason of what gave me so much courage to still stay out and to be able to stand up and say, "This is a cult, and it's not for me, and it's not right, and I'm not gonna support it anymore."
Well, that's awesome. That's the best compliment I think I can get, and I love that it helps people. And it's not, obviously it's not just me; it's all the people, all these wonderful people who come on here and are brave enough to be vulnerable and tell their story, so that other people, like we talked about earlier, don't feel alone. And I'm sure your story is going to help somebody else. So I appreciate it.